Hello again. So today I'm going to demonstrate how to make the glue that you'll need to wet mount a traditional Chinese brush painting. So when you've finished your Chinese brush painting, it's usually a bit creased and flimsy, and we then put a couple or at least one layer of paper onto the back of the painting to enable us to stretch it, get rid of those creases and make it nice and smooth, ready to put into a frame. And to do this we use a glue that's usually made with wheat starch and water. So I've got a pack of the wheat starch here, which you can get from Oriental food stores. If you can't get the wheat starch, some people use corn flour as an alternative. I'm going to start by mixing the flour, the wheat starch, with some water, and you want to use a ratio of 1 part of the wheat starch to 5 parts water. But I'm going to start by blending 1 part with 1 part of the wheat starch with 1 part water. So there's 1 of wheat starch, and I'm now putting 1 of water in to this bowl. You want just to mix it until you get a smooth liquid without any lumps. So you can see that it's quite a white, opaque liquid at the moment. While you're doing that, you can bring a further 4 parts of water onto up to the boil on the hob. So I put it's a ratio of 1 part of the wheat starch to 5 parts water. I've put 1 part into here, and I've put a further 4 measures into my saucepan on the hob. So that's coming up to the boil now. And then we can introduce this mix into the water. So you want to have a spoon ready and put this in while you're stirring, and you want to stir it rapidly as you pour. And this should very quickly, within a matter of a few moments, start to change. The water will thicken and that white wheat starch will change from that white opaque to a sort of more of a translucent look. And you can see probably now that that's changed already. We've already got a much more not quite transparent, but a translucent and very gluey, sticky liquid there now. I'll just give that a few more seconds on the hob to make sure it's completely changed over. That stage is complete. So I now put this to one side to cool, and I would normally, if I'm planning to do some wet mounting of my paintings, I would normally prepare the glue the day before and sit that in the fridge overnight once it's cooled down. So the next day when you take it out of the fridge, you'll find that it's a sort of like a jelly, it's set to a jelly type consistency. You can see it's quite stiff there. So we now need to make it into a sort of a thinnish liquid that we can use as a glue on the paintings. So to do that, I'm going to add in a further 2 measures of water. And then start to mix that in to the glue that we had from yesterday. Now this would normally spend a little bit of time on this, but I'm going to move on to show you the next stage. So the traditional method of then turning this into a more even consistency, so we haven't got all these lumpy bits, is to strain it through a muslin cloth. So we'd have a clean bowl and we cover that with the muslin cloth and pour this into the cloth. And then the idea is that you strain it through the muslin cloth by squeezing. Now I find this very difficult to do. It's quite a strain on your hands. If you haven't got very strong hands, it's quite a strain on your hands. So what I do instead is to put mine into a soup blender. So I've got the same mix here. I've got the glue that I made up yesterday in the saucepan, chilled overnight, and I've mixed again 2 parts water into this using the same measure, so another 2 parts water into there, and then I put that into my soup blender and use that, and I find that that will get rid of most of the lumps, and you'll get something that's quite liquid and easy to use without the more difficult traditional method of squeezing it through a cloth. So I'll just do this briefly so that you can see what happens. So you can see that now we've got a pourable glue. I'd probably, if I was doing this myself, I'd probably do a little bit more blending than I've done just now, but only a few seconds. And you can see now that I've got a sort of a mixture that's fairly even. Give it a little bit of a stir. It's probably still a little bit too thick, so I'd add a little bit more water to that. You want something sort of the consistency of gravy or a thin custard. So I'll probably put another measure of water in there and do a bit more blending. I think it depends sort of how much water you lose when you're cooking it on the hob to some extent, but you want something that's, I'd say, more like a thin gravy or a thin custard, so that you can easily brush it over your painting. So that's more the sort of consistency you want. You can see it's coming off the spoon there fairly easily now, and that will be out, that I can now brush that over my paintings, and that's about the consistency you want. So once I've got it to this stage, I would then tip it into a plastic bowl that's got a cover, and then I can store that in the fridge for a few days. So if I'm mounting, stretching and mounting a batch of paintings, I can use it and then do another batch the next day, and it'll keep for maybe 3-4 days in the fridge with a cover on it. Well, you know sort of when it goes off, because instead when you open it, and you'll see that it's started to separate. You'll get sort of like sort of clumps of glue and clumps of water. It starts to separate again. That's the time to throw it out, but it's good for, you know, 2 or 3 days at least if you keep it covered in the fridge. So that's how you make the glue for traditional Chinese brush painting mounting technique using a wet method.